with China starting to emerge from the shadows of the Russia-Ukraine war, and President Biden speaking to Chairman Xi of China on a phone call earlier, we sat down with Representative Lisa McClain to discuss. Congresswoman Lisa McClain, thank you for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Thank you for having me.
Congresswoman, earlier today, prior to President Biden's phone meeting with Xi Jinping of China, China actually put a ship through the Taiwanese, the Strait of Taiwan. What type of message do you think that the Chinese regime is trying to send, and how big of a concern is this to you?
One, I think it's very concerning. I'm not much for coincidences, and this seems to be a pattern every time the president meets with an adversary, so to speak, is whether it's the bombing in Erbil, last Saturday, I think it was, hitting very close to our consulate, whether it's sending a ship in the straits near Taiwan. Those are calculated messages, and I don't know how anyone can put a positive spin on that. So I think it's gravely concerning. I say this a lot, but it's very true. Weakness breeds aggression. And our adversaries are sending us a message. China is sending us a message, and it's not a positive one.
There's been very few voices, yours being one of the few, ringing the alarm bells when it comes to China and the threat of China. What do you think it's going to take for the business community and the U.S. government to actually really get serious when it comes to dealing with the CCP?
Unfortunately, I think it's going to take an extreme tragedy. I hate to say that. I hope it doesn't take that, but I hope we can learn some lessons from the past. Listen, we live and work in a global economy. We can't pretend that we don't. But we have products and services, goods and services, that people around the world, especially the Chinese, want to import, want to buy. We need to lead, and we need to lead from the front on that. And if you want to buy our resources, if you want to do business with the United States, you have to play by our rules. It's flip-flopped right now. Right now, we're playing by the Chinese rules. That needs to change. Trust me, follow the money. Economics is the backbone of any good economy. And we need to start playing from a position of strength, a position of power, and we need to set the rules.
Now, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk to you about rising prices, whether it be the inflation or high gas prices that have been exacerbated from the conflict in Ukraine. What are your constituents saying to you? What are you hearing from them?
My constituents are frustrated, they're irritated, and they can't afford $5 a gallon for gas. They can't afford the inflation. They can't afford to go to the stores and have the shelves empty. And they are very, very upset, and they're concerned. And that's what they want us to talk about and fix in government. I think one of the biggest issues that government faces today is the disconnect between us here on Capitol Hill and the people in the district or the people back home. This administration is completely out of touch with reality in terms of what's going on. I mean, I have people in my district that have to make a choice between, do I fill up my car, do I buy medicine, or what food do I put on the table for my families? And they're screaming it at the top of their lungs. That's what they want us to deal with. And that's what we need to deal with.
Do you see a path to work with Democrats and get them on board to open up to American energy independence?
I think if we listen to our constituents, which is what we were elected to do, it's our responsibility to find that path. That is energy independence. If what is happening in Russia, in Ukraine right now, if that doesn't speak volumes of the importance of being energy independent, I don't know what will wake up this administration and the progressives to, that is critical. And we need energy independence, and we need it now, because without it, we are extremely vulnerable.
Congresswoman Lisa McClain, thank you.
Thank you.
Prevent China from becoming a financial safe haven for Russian firms seeking to avoid sanctions. In a statement Thursday, Senator Rubio said this bill would make it, quote, nearly impossible for Chinese banks to access the U.S. financial system if they choose to transact with Russian banks using Chinese or Russian financial messaging systems. Senators have expressed concern that if China becomes a backup bank for Russia, it would undermine sanctions designed to punish Putin for his attack on Ukraine. The Russian government is going to treat any cargo moving weapons to Ukraine as a military target. The announcement comes shortly after Senator Lindsey Graham introduced a resolution urging Congress to give MiG fighter jets and other air defense systems to Ukraine.
So while I oppose a NATO no-fly zone, I support enthusiastically the sending of MiG aircraft from Poland to the Ukrainian Air Force so they can be more competitive in the skies.
On Wednesday, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky appeared before Congress in a virtual call. He asked the U.S. to provide more military aid and to continue sanctioning Russia. Russia's war against Ukraine is boosting U.S. arms sales to European allies. Multiple countries have sent shopping lists of weaponry to the U.S. government and other defense contractors. Sources revealed that Germany is close to a deal with Lockheed Martin to buy 35 F-35 jet fighters. The country has also inquired about systems to defend against ballistic missiles. And according to a Polish government official, Poland is eager to buy advanced MQ-9 Reaper drone systems. Other Eastern European countries have their hearts set on weaponry Ukraine has successfully used against the Russians. These include anti-aircraft Stinger missiles and anti-tank javelins. Given the growing uncertainty in the region, Germany, Sweden, and Denmark have all pledged to significantly boost their defense spending. A senior Pentagon official said the Pentagon has teamed up with contractors. They're now working to expedite stockpile replenishment so as to meet the needs from both Ukraine and other allies in the region. The cost of energy and the issue of producing that energy back here at home has been at the center of discussion lately. Representative Pete Stauber represents natural resource-rich Minnesota. We had a chance to sit down with him earlier to discuss, but first we asked him about the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Here's a look. Congressman Pete Stauber, thank you for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's great to be here.
Now, Congressman, I just want to get your thoughts on the current situation in Ukraine. We're seeing all of the bombings. It's the humanitarian crisis there. Do you see any path to de-escalation?
Well, I do, and obviously, just this past week, President Zelensky spoke to Congress, both the House and the Senate, and he was very passionate about what's happening. And we have to, as the world looks upon this, Vladimir Putin must be punished for what he's doing to Ukraine. This is an unprovoked attack, and the world is seeing this, and you're seeing some of the pictures that are going on. And President Zelensky said something that was very striking to many of us. He said, being the leader of the free world means being the leader of peace as well. And that was directed to Joe Biden, who I think is leading from behind at this point. We have, France and Germany, and now China trying to get into the negotiations and what have you. So we can do better, but there is a path. The Ukrainian people need our help. We're providing, anti-aircraft missiles and weaponry so the Ukrainians can defend themselves from this dastardly attack by Russia.
Now, Congressman, one of the side effects of this war is inflating already high gas prices. So I just want to ask you, what are the people back home saying to you?
Well, that's one of the big things we're hearing back home in northern Minnesota are the rising gas prices and inflation, which hurts the middle class. And I represent a very blue-collar middle class citizens in northeastern Minnesota. And the gas prices, they're paying sometimes double. I mean, under the President Trump, our gas prices when he left office were $1.87. Now they're pushing $4. Almost twice the amount, and that affects the pocketbook of the families, and they're having to choose between gasoline in their car or food or items for the family. So, and it doesn't have to be this way. The assault on the energy producers in this country by President Biden really started 5 hours after he was sworn in, when he stopped the Keystone and put the federal bans on oil drilling. So we can do better. American energy is the cleanest in the world. Just let us unleash American energy and have energy independence.
And I want to ask you about that. There is a lot of talk about domestic energy being stifled, also mining, the ability to mine.
Yeah.
People don't think of the United States as having all of these raw natural resources. How does this all come together?
Well, let's talk about energy and mining. We have to get back to energy dominance and mining dominance. We have to control the destiny of our own hands and put it in the palm of our own hands, rather. We should never be begging OPEC or Iran, Venezuela, or others, or Russia for oil. When we have an abundance here, it's a God-given natural resource, and we do it better than anybody with the best environmental standards and the best labor standards. So let's unleash those economic drivers in both oil production and critical minerals. And as you know, northeastern Minnesota is a mining territory. We mine the iron ore that makes 80+% of our nation's steel, and we have the biggest copper nickel find in North America in northeastern Minnesota, called the Duluth Complex, which hosts 95% of the nation's nickel reserve, 88% of the cobalt reserve, and over a third of the copper. And when we look at transitioning to alternative sources of energy, for example, wind energy, people must understand that a windmill has 4,000 pounds of copper. We can provide that. We don't have to look from foreign sources in many of those nations that are adversaries to the United States. We can do it right here, and we have the workforce in northeastern Minnesota. They're ready, able, and willing to extract those minerals. We just have to have an administration that allows it to happen.
And to your point, there's been a loud call from Democrats to invest in solar, wind, and also electric vehicles. You mentioned nickel. Nickel's a primary component in electric vehicles. They're very expensive. So would tapping into some of the nickel supply there also help to bring down the cost of electric vehicles potentially?
It would not only help bring down the cost, but it would secure the supply chain. So those manufacturers of those electric vehicles won't have to source that nickel from foreign adversarial nations that would control the manufacturing. In northeastern Minnesota, there's another nickel mine called Talon Metals. It's in Tamarack, Minnesota. Tesla just signed a contract to, I believe, the first 75,000 tons of nickel is going to go to Tesla for their vehicles. This is what we can do. You don't have to go anywhere in any other country for the nickel when we have it right here under our feet, and we do it better than anybody. And I just mentioned 95% of the nation's nickel reserves are in northeastern Minnesota in the Duluth Complex. But this administration won't let us drill for those minerals.
Congressman Pete Stauber, thank you.
Thank you very much.
On Thursday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi urged President Biden to request over $40 billion for COVID relief. This to cover costs of testing, vaccines, and therapeutics. Biden initially requested $22 billion in new funding to meet immediate needs of the pandemic response. But that number met with Republican opposition and was reduced to $15.6 billion. On Friday, Health Secretary Xavier Becerra made an appeal to Congress for new funding.
Please don't let us fall behind. We've made too much progress. You did too much good last year. To let us now fall short on COVID at a time when we are getting a grip on that virus would be devastating, perhaps deadly.
Speaker Pelosi had hoped to vote on funding this week, but the House had not yet reached an agreement with the Senate on spending. Senator Josh Hawley has expressed concerns twice this week about President Biden's Supreme Court nominee, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Hawley claims that Jackson has let child sex predators off the hook.
Is a pattern here of treating sex offenders leniently, those who have gone after children. And I think we just have a basic question to ask. Are we going to get a judge here who's going to protect children or who's going to protect child predators? It's a simple question. It's one I think that every parent in America would like answered, but it's one that the White House doesn't want to answer. And so far, Judge Jackson doesn't want to answer it.
Confirmation hearings begin Monday. Jackson met with 44 senators, including members of the entire Judiciary Committee, who reviewed her qualifications. If confirmed, she would be the first black woman to serve on the Supreme Court. Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser is proposing a budget for 2023. It will include $1.7 million to rehabilitate the city's youth.
This year, we're giving them a new tool, and that tool is life coaching.
The mayor's strategy to stop crime is to focus on stopping young people from becoming criminals. She plans to use that money to hire life coaches for people most prone to gun violence.
And that is a $1.7 million investment.
The proposed budget will also include $30 million to boost the D.C. police force to 4,000 officers, $500 million for D.C.'s Affordable Housing Fund, and $13.5 million for summer camps and other programs.